What if I told you that you could have the most realistic track work on the planet without hand laying or expensive jigs? Introducing the Roadmaster series from Oak Hill Model Railroad Track Supply. Straight track, curved track, diamonds and turnouts that are easy to assemble and provide all the detail of real track. And coming soon, curvable turnouts. Learn more on their website, ohrtracksupply.com. Attention proto throttle users. If you've ever wanted to have your throttle fit more comfortably in your hand and change the batteries without removing the throttle's case, now you can. Introducing the Narrow Throttle, a new product developed by Scott Thornton that reduces the size of the proto throttle by over 25%. Log on to narrowthrottle.square.site to learn more. That's narrowthrottle.square.site. Enjoy more comfort and never have to open the case again. Trains aren't just a hobby, they're a way of life. At 1810 Designs, they create handcrafted wood art that captures the spirit of the rails. Whether you're a modeler, a collector, or just love the sound of a distant whistle, 1810 Designs is here to enhance the hobby. Visit 1810designs.com and bring the railroad home. That's 18tendesigns.com. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com.
ATLP Rewind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. So glad you could join us. Coming to us from the great state of North Carolina, Glen Frix. Glen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
It's good to have you here, and I am so excited to hear about the organization that you're a part of. And when I say organization, even that may be too formal for what you guys are doing, but it is a group of enthusiasts who are having a load of fun with modular layouts. So tonight we're going to be talking modular layouts, and more specifically, the Sipping and Switching Society of North Carolina, to which you're representing, but there really is no leader. And we're going to get into all of that. And it's kind of the club without a club within a club, but it's not a club. So it's going to be kind of fun to chat about all that. But first, why don't you tell us, as we get rolling here, a little bit about yourself and kind of your abbreviated model railroad story.
Well, Ray, I can't remember ever not having a model train. And that goes back to when I was, 3 or 4 years old. I remember having one. And so I've always been interested in it. And similar to others, as time went on and I got a little older, late junior high school age, you start getting interested in other things. And so put the trains away and ended up going to NC State College and studied electrical engineering up there. And just so happens there's a double track main line goes right through the middle of campus. I had to walk through the tunnels under the tracks to get to the classes in the morning. So a lot of the kids up there thought that was a nuisance. I thought it was great. So then when got out of school, 1983, moved down here in the Charlotte area, ran into some fellows and joined a club. And so we've been doing model railroading ever since. Took a break for a while, built my house, that type thing. And there's a Christmas show down here, and I was helping the club run their modular layout at the Christmas show. And a fella came in, I guess he came down with his wife, and his name's Ken Anderson. And Ken came in and was talking to me and told me about this modular club that he was in called the Sipping and Switching Society of North Carolina. And that was probably 2002. And I saw them, I guess, the first time in the beginning of 2003. And oh my gosh, I was blown away by their modules and been hanging out with those guys ever since.
So you had some experience with modular layouts even prior to getting with these Sipping and Switching guys. Tell us a little bit about that and kind of your introduction to modular layouts.
Yeah, so this group, again, they were trying to build a permanent layout. And as happens with clubs got, put out of their building and went to another place and so on and so forth. And the other place they went to was a little bit outside of Charlotte, and the driving distance and all became kind of an issue. And then, in the middle of that, and I told all the guys, no offense, I'm not upset about it or anything, but I just had started building a house, had other things going on, and I just had to step away from it. I had too many things going on, and but their modules were pretty standard modules, if you will, multiples of 4 feet and that type thing, 2 tracks. We were really limited at that time by transportation, so we had to make the modules a little smaller than we maybe would want to, and so on. But it was kind of neat to see that for the first time. That is the first time I saw it. Just a concept that I really hadn't thought about much before.
So they were following a standard. Were they following like a national standard or their own standard? How was this coming together?
I think it was kind of their own standard.
Was it something where you would get a module or like a bench work, or do you had to create your own bench work? How did that all work with them?
So that in that club, the club owned all the modules, and you took your own trains to run on the modules. It's very different with the sipping and switching group in that there really is no structure for the club, so to speak, to own anything. And so everything there, we have our own modules, a standard of our own, and it works out great that way.
So this club prior, were you building a module? Did you build modular layouts or any of the modules themselves?
Yeah, like I mentioned, unfortunately, we had some transportation issues and actually had to make some of the modules a little bit smaller. Had the 1x4s and the drywall screws, and built several curves and that type thing to display really at this Christmas show. So that was a neat experience. But then when I got involved with the Sipping and Switching Society, it came together building my own modules here in the house, in the basement and out in the garage, and that was a neat experience. And of course, I jumped in the deep end of the shark pool and made a very complicated set of modules as my first ones. And the way we build these things in the what we call the waffle design. Once you put that waffle together, if you've got a little bit of warp in it or something like that, it's over with. You can't get it out. And so my first probably 2 modules ended up in the Lincoln County landfill. But I got it right eventually, and it worked out. And I've got about probably 6 or 8 modules now, if you count my mini modules.
So before we move too far away from the first club that you were in, what you were telling me seems to be a common occurrence of an issue with clubs, and especially whether it be modular or if they're building a permanent, is real estate. It seemingly is so hard for a club to come together, maintain the organization needed to maintain a clubhouse somewhere. And then they always seem to be a building. Not always. I mean, I'm sure there's clubs that have a lot of, but they end up in tough spots and then there's a landlord issue, or they have, and it's so hard to try to keep something like that going. So kind of leading into what your folks are doing with the Sipping and Switching Society, where you don't have real estate, you don't own anything, and it all becomes this thing where you come together without having that nuisance. And that seems to be just a relief in itself, just not having to deal with the fact that, are we going to get kicked out of here next week kind of feeling.
Ray, that is absolutely true. And the other thing that just breaks my heart is seeing on social media where people are having to tear down their layout. It just makes me cringe. So I've already told my girlfriend Karen, if something happens to me, go up the street, find Rob. He knows, and just give the guys my stuff, and that way it'll live on.
And that's the other thing too. If it's not designed to move, it doesn't seem to move that well. Translating layouts from place to place just seems to be a struggle.
I'm fortunate enough I'm actually sitting here in the man cave talking to you. So the man cave is big enough. I can set up a little oval using my modules. I've also got a switching, an industrial scene that kind of a hub and spoke type thing that is my most recent, and having a ball with that thing, really enjoying that. So again, I'm able to take what I have for my home layout, go get with all my buddies. Most recent show we had, I think we were about 9,900 square feet, something like that. And the stuff was packed in there. We're in there for 3 full days, and we just had a blast. It's out of sight.
Well, I'll tell you, modular design and just the whole theory of modular, and it seems like the best of both worlds, where you can have a small switching layout in your man cave like you have, but then take them and then become more than that. You can run bigger trains when you tie everything together with all the members of the group. So you kind of have your cake and eat it too.
That's right. That's right. And you go from having something that's really small to being part of this, weekend empire, and it's awesome.
You mentioned meeting this Ken Anderson, not the quarterback from the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Another Ken Anderson, but similar name and easy to remember. Talk about your introduction to this and your first impressions of what the Sipping and Switching Society was.
I was just blown away. I had not seen many modular layouts. Social media wasn't around back then. And when I saw these guys, they were using all different sizes of track. So there was code 40, there was code 55, code 70, code 83, code 100 on these modules. And then another fella in the group, and he probably is the father of the template that we use, if you will, Joe Blent. He is a track work wizard. And they had tracks from the inside crossing over the two main lines, coming out to the outside, hand laid, turnouts. And I was just absolutely blown away by the detail that they had. There are probably 10 or 15 guys in the group that are just absolutely wizards with scenery, just make jaw dropping scenery. And another interesting thing to me is how, these things get transported all over the Southeast in race car trailers and, hitting potholes in the interstate and all that kind of stuff. And they don't get torn up. And it's really, really neat how we're able to do that. And you would think that with the delicacy of scenery, trees, things like that, that the scenery will get ruined, but it doesn't.
How do you overcome that? How do you get them moved from place to place and do it in a way that doesn't destroy them?
So if you can picture this in words, I try to do the best I can here. You take two modules and you turn them on their side, scenery to scenery, and then the same alignment pins that we use to hook the modules together when they're upright are used in this carrier. And the carrier has got casters on the bottom of it. So basically at that point, you've got two modules riding in this carrier, and with casters, and we basically roll them out of the trailers, and usually we're allowed to drive into the venue, and we roll them into place, set them up on their legs, and go to town.
Holy moly, who engineered all this to be able to make sure that these all line up? And I'm just thinking logistics wise of making sure that everything lines up and being able to put these together like that.
So the whole key to the system, and I'm pretty sure Joe Blent put this together, is this metal template that we have. And the template has these notches in it, and that defines the gauge of the track. And then there's 4 alignment holes on it. And basically this template aligns the gauge and the top of the rails to these alignment holes. And there's 4 alignment holes. So 2 of them get a pin in it and 2 of them stay as holes. And, you just take the 2 modules, pull them together, the pins go in the holes, and you C-clamp them together. We use a 4-pin trailer plug on the main lines and a 4-pin Molex plug on the switching district. So rolling the two modules out of the trailer, getting them relatively in the same in the right position, setting them up on their legs, connecting them together, putting the C-clamps on them, connecting the wires. You've got those two modules up and ready to go under 2 minutes.
Yeah, somebody really did some really good thinking and planning on this. When we were talking here, Glenn held up the template, and that's a heavy duty template. Well, I mean, that's like a thick gauge, like steel template. Yep. And we'll get pictures of them. We'll share them on our website, aroundthelayout.com/157 for those that check it out. That is a heavy duty template. And no wonder why. I mean, that definitely can help provide some really good accuracy and consistency within your modules.
So the first set that I did when I finally got them straight and could take them to a show, they had not been in the same county with another set of modules. They hooked up with the others, and I think I had the wires reversed. I had to go to the terminal blocks and change the wires around. That's the only thing, and worked like a champ the first time they showed up at a show.
It's kind of funny to me. I'm sitting here thinking about all the thought that went into creating that template and all that organization needed to make sure that these all line up. And it almost contrasts the administrative side of things, because really there is no administrative side of things. And you had sent me the frequently asked questions regarding the Sipping and Switching Society of North Carolina. And the group is basically, it's almost like the rule is there are no rules. Tell us about the informality of the group and really how it's become an advantage for you folks.
Yeah, so we really do think it's an advantage, and frankly, I've grown up with it now, if you will. Been hanging out with these guys for 22 years, and it's just become old hat. People ask us about our standards, so we use this template that we're talking about, and again, we'll get some pictures. So our standards are the modules have to come together at the template. They're typically multiples of 2 feet long, and the top of the rail is 48 inches nominally off the floor. And there is a person called the cruise director, like off the Love Boat, if you will, from way back. And the cruise director is the in charge person for the event. And if there's a disagreement, the cruise director gets 100% of the vote. And that's it. That's our organization. So we've got our modules set up in a CAD system in blocks, and somebody will work with a venue, get us a place set up, and we'll say, hey, I've got the Rowan County Fairgrounds in Salisbury. I got a 10,000 foot building the weekend of February, whatever. Who's coming? And what modules are you bringing? And, that goes out maybe a couple months ahead of time. And folks will say, oh, man, I can't come to that one. But anyway, we determine who's going to show up. There's 3 or 4 of us that can put the layout together in CAD. And we'll send that out a couple weeks ahead of time so people kind of know where their modules are going to be in the layout, and send that out, and we'll show up. So our most recent show or event wasn't really a show, was in that Rowan County Fairgrounds. It's in Salisbury, North Carolina, just right up the road. Some of the listeners may be familiar with the North Carolina Transportation Museum, and it's awesome. And it's this fairgrounds about 8 or 9 miles away from that, maybe. We showed up there on a Thursday morning, and it takes everybody a little bit to arrive and get their trailers unloaded and everything. Probably about 3 p.m. We had the layout up and running. And again, this system with the template, with the alignment holes, the pins, the quick connects, that type thing, we spend our time building our modules at home, making them bulletproof at home. So when we show up at the show, we plug them up and start running trains. And that's just really cool.
About how many shows are you folks doing a year?
We're probably in the 4 to 5 range.
Okay, so every other month or so, you're doing a show of some form.
Yep.
But leads back to this question of how the heck are you doing it with rules, with organization membership list? And I'm going to read right from the document you sent me. And this is the frequently asked questions regarding the Sipping and Switching Society of North Carolina.
Well, we start slipping if we do too much sipping.
Yeah,
right?
slipping. Yeah, that's right. I'm slipping. Question: tell me about the Sipping and Switching North Carolina organization. Answer: there is no organization. There are no officers. There are no dues. There are no politics. Question: where are the bylaws? Answer: there are none. Question: cruise director? Answer: our only officer is the person known as a cruise director who coordinates our show appearances. You did tell us about that. This is a thankless voluntary position that rotates every show. Question: how do you just survive without any organization bylaws? There's my question, right? And it just says, we have probably survived this long because we don't have them. And it's so amazing. And going back to that first one, there are no politics. And I'm not picking on clubs. There are some really great clubs, but it's a human element that just seemingly happens, that when you get people together into an organization, and I'm not just singling out model railroading either. I was a member of a fire department, and boy, oh boy, there was politics. And anybody who's been in a fire department that's listening to this podcast will likely agree with me. It's so amazing. And I guess I'll put another question in there. How the heck do you do it? How do you keep this mindset that there doesn't have to be a meeting with a president and a vice president and a gavel and a pile of bylaws and somehow not only do you not have it, your success is because you don't have it. It's just absolutely amazing. Tell me more, please.
It is amazing. And, we're focused on getting these modules put together and running trains. The other neat thing about these modules, I didn't really talk about this, is we have basically a main line, if you will, that are 8 inches and 10 inches in typically from the outside of the module. Then 21 inches in from the outside is a switching district. And, we've got people that love to run long trains on the main line, so to speak. And all the folks would tell you that I spend most of my time in the switching district. And we, we're focused on getting these modules put together as quick as we can, and then having as much fun as we can in the 2 to 3 days that we're all together. And then we take them down, we pat each other on the back and see you in a couple months and do it again the next time. And again, the whole politic thing just magically doesn't appear.
Amazing. That's just, you got to have the right people and the right mindset. And I think this FAQ just definitely sets people. I'm looking at the other things, the do's and don'ts. We'll have to share portions of this document because it's pretty funny. It's like, do's and don'ts. Don't show up to the layout, barge in, play with your trains, then leave. Don't damage the modules or other trains. Don't leave your trains on track and walk away. Don't complain, whine, moan on the websites and forums. Make your point. Don't take advantage of the group. It's just so simple and blunt, yet so perfect and kind of what we need. You're not tiptoeing around in this document. This is what we are. This is what we do. And ultimately we just want to be able to run our trains and have a great time. And you're doing that. Now we've talked a lot about the switching part, but we got to get to the sipping part because that seems to be important since that's the first part of the name. So why don't you tell us about the sipping part of the sipping and switching?
The grapevine says that there's several groups maybe called the Sipping and Switching Society, and I wasn't around when that came about. So in the frequently asked questions, it's people will walk up to you at a show every once in a while and say, well, hey, what do you sip? And I always answer, well, hey, what do you got? And so bunches of us are fans of Cheerwine. That's a little soft drink company here in the Southeast that's actually headquartered in Salisbury. Not an expert on the history of that particular thing in there, Ray. works out good for us. Kind of a neat story when people ask us about that.
Well, I think the two elements and ultimately the fun, obviously talk about the success of the group. But let's talk a little bit also about the diversity of the group and how that fun has helped you become a much more diverse group of a group of folks that just love trains.
Something that I'm pretty proud of, if you will. We have got, I'll turn 64 this summer. We've got a bunch of people that are relatively my age, but kind of a neat thing. People talk about the hobby dying and young people aren't involved in it, that kind of thing. We've probably got 15 or 20, maybe more than that, 20 somethings, 30 somethings in our group. And gosh, we've attracted some really awesome ones too. They do some fantastic work. There's one young fella that's probably a rising junior at Virginia Tech. I've had him put decoders in my engines for years, and he does a great job with that. Got a young fella that works for the CSX down in the Augusta area. He and his wife are actually building modules, Charles and Catherine. And gosh, they're just doing such an awesome job on the scenery and such. So just really neat to have the different age groups and all in our group.
Why do you think the younger folks are so attracted to the Sipping and Switching Society?
I think probably for the same reason I was. We can set up a humongous layout, and we can do it in a relatively short amount of time. Now, some of our modules, we build the modules quicker than we can put scenery on them, that type thing. But it's pretty awesome when Donnie is running his probably 110 car Southern coal train. It's got the helpers in the middle, that type thing. Oh my gosh. So another thing that's really good, like Joe, our track guy, he's got some curves that make a 90-degree turn. They're a 24-foot radius.
Wow.
So the train hardly even knows it's going around a curve, right?
So yeah, that's huge.
We've got yards enough to handle trains that big and that type thing. So, and then again, if you're like me and you want to be involved in the switching, we've got that too with our modules. And so there's a little bit for everybody. And we've got people that are really good at helping you detail engines, detail cars, things like that. We've got some people, as I mentioned before, that are just phenomenal with scenery. So there's just a wide variety of skill sets in our group, and it's just really neat.
I was going to ask, how do you organize? But I don't think we want to stay away from that word. Like, how do you put together these operating sessions? How does that all come together?
So again, I'm actually in the middle of putting together the layout plan for the big train show in Johnson City, Tennessee. That's the Friday and Saturday after Memorial Day this year. And just like I mentioned before, so Ken Anderson is actually the cruise director for that event. So he asked me to put the layout plan together. So we've got a group.io site, and typically then we'll put out, say, okay, we're doing Johnson City, May 29th and 30th. Who's coming? What modules are you bringing? And folks will reply to that. And as I mentioned, I've got a CAD program that is a low budget AutoCAD compatible CAD system. And we've got some drawings that we store out on our group's IO site. And we'll go get those drawings. That's the master file, if you will. The master file has everybody's module drawn in it, and might not be exact, but we know in general what sidings are on it, what industries are on it, that type of thing, and what the configuration is. And just basically from that, put them together kind of like dominoes. And it actually, Ray, it's a heck of a lot of fun. I enjoy doing that very much.
Well, obviously there has to be some form of standard that you folks have come together to make sure that the modules all fit together. Are there any other requirements when it comes to building the module? I know you mentioned that they're a waffle design. Why don't you start by telling us about that?
So yeah, this I think is really neat and allows us to do these large layouts. So the modules are built out of, I guess it's 5 millimeter Luan or underlayment. So Sureply is a recent example that you can pick up at Lowe's and Home Depot and such. A typical module is 30 inches wide. It's a multiple of 2 feet long. And so the top deck is solid. Then underneath that is like a torsion box. So the ribs and cross each other at 90 degrees. And then on the bottom is basically the same size as the top, except it's cut out in this oval shape. And basically, if you turn it upside down, it looks like a waffle. Looks like a waffle iron. And so the bottom is open so that you can get to the bottom of the rails to do your drops, etc. You're going to put the manual turnout throws in the bottom. So I just use Caboose Industries on mine, but some of the people have those rods on them.
So that gets you your bench work. Now, I see in the FAQ that you guys also have all the different connectors and plugs that you use, because you got to, everything's got to be able to plug together. I love the part where then it starts asking about track, and it's just basically, if I was just to summarize this, it's like kind of do what you want, just so long as the rail is at 48 inches high and you're using something that will work with everything. If you want to do 183, 70, 55, 40, as long as you align it with the template, it works.
That's right, because the template aligns the top of the rail with the alignment holes. So if your module has code 40 and my module has code 100, as long as the tops are aligned with that template, the engine has no idea that it's just crossed over from 40 to 100. Again, the modules are multiples of 2 feet long, and people, will ask, well, how long should I make one? And I would tell them, you make the module as long as it will fit in your man cave at home, and as long as you can to put it in your trailer. Because if you have an 8-foot module, that's 2 less joints that you have, or 1 less joint that you have to put together than if you have 2 4-foot modules. And it's,
right,
more connections that you have to have and that type thing. So the longest modules that we have right now that I'm aware of are 12 feet. I've got a couple 10-footers, and then we've got a bunch load of 8s, 4s, 6s, and 2s. And then the curves have to be multiples of 2 feet also to fit in our grid so that it all works together. So you build your module. You can do pretty much whatever you want to in the center of the module. Obviously, it's got to come back and meet the template at the end. If you have 2 modules that always stay together, you have to meet the template back at the 16 feet instead of 8, right?
Basically, when you leave your property, it's got to be at those 2 things.
Exactly.
I'm just blown away. I'm thinking about how fun that would be. Like it seems like you could do pretty much whatever you want. Like you could have some mainline. You could build an industry off of it. You could have some switching on it that you want, you want to share with others.
Yep.
And not have to worry about. And again, I'm not trying to pick on clubs, but the scenery committees, we already have one of these. It doesn't sound like that's any of what you folks are doing. It's kind of like, I almost want to call it Wild West of sort, where it's up to you.
So I've heard of groups that they want their scenery to be more standard, if you will. But Ray, when especially the ones in our group that are these scenery wizards, when you put these 2 modules together, you're so blown away by the scenery on the module that you just don't even pick up on the little things, that might be at the end of the track or whatever, where my module meets yours, and you've painted your cross ties a little bit different color than mine or whatever. I just don't even see that because I'm focused on these great scenes that are there. My friend Mark Gugliotta, for example, he's got this float yard, and it's a dead end module, so it has to go at the end of a branch. And oh my gosh, that thing! I mean, Mark is one of those scenery wizards, and I mean it's just absolutely front page of the periodical material here on that. And there's several guys like that. Rick Matar, Ken Anderson, they're just absolute wizards at that. So I spend a lot of time at our functions rail fanning, just going back and looking at these things because they're just fantastic.
Well, I'm wondering if that also helps when you have a module that goes up to theirs. Maybe it puts a little pressure on you to step your game up as well, or try to learn from them so that you can try to meet their level as well.
So this is just my personal story. I end up getting into some analysis paralysis a little bit because they have set the bar so high. I would say that in relative terms, if they're A plus, I'm maybe B minus or something like that. I'm nowhere near. It inspires me to get from, instead of being C minus on my scenery, to at least get to the B minus area.
Yeah, and I think that's the better way of going about it. It's not a committee telling you that your work is worse or needs to improve. You get to make that decision by looking at your own and being able to see others' work. And I mean, the camaraderie must be amazing. I mean, that you keep this thing all together without, a big rule book or being forced to. You guys just want to be there. And what a world of difference that must make. And the fact that they want to help other people become better modelers as well.
Yep, that is true. And like I said, I've been hanging out with these guys for about 20 some years, and just really good friends with most of the guys. And there's nothing we wouldn't do to help each other out and that type of thing. Very close knit group, and that's pretty cool.
Well, this has been really educational, and it's got me fired up to start talking about building a modular layout. Like I've got the time, but I would still love to do it. And the entry point of doing modular, like you've talked about, even if you could just build one and start there and just become a part of it, and then you can work your way to a second one and a third one, or if you don't like the first one, replace it and build a new one. And whatever the landfill that you mentioned, just join it with the ones that ended up in that landfill.
Mm-hmm.
And start over. And it seems to be manageable, seems to be affordable, because you're only building 6 or 8 feet or less of railroads. So what a great entry point into the hobby as well.
That's right. That's right. There have been numerous people that have maybe built 2 4-foot modules because that's what they had the ability to transport. And, then they can put them together in a carrier and wheel them in. And maybe they ride in the back of the pickup truck, obviously covered over really good with tarps in case it rains. Certainly there's all kinds of entry points into the system.
Heck, you can fit a 6 to 8 foot long in the back of a minivan and bring it to a show.
Absolutely.
And be able to do that as well. So a lot of ways to get in there. And I'm sure you get in with a buddy who's got a trailer or whatnot, and you throw yours in with his or something. I'm sure there's carpooling that goes along with this as well, but very cool. And I know we only just kind of skimmed the surface of the Sipping and Switching Society of North Carolina, but we'll share a whole bunch of information on them, including their Facebook page. And all of that will be on aroundthelayout.com/157. We also tied this in because it was modular based as our topic episode. And we asked our listeners as part of the question of the month to tell us about their modules. But I know you didn't get a chance to slip in your answer for the question of the month. So why don't you, before we get into theirs, Glenn, tell us about your favorite module.
Well, it's the one I mentioned earlier. I've designed a switching module. I call it Industrial Park. My grandfather worked at the Seaboard Yard in Hialeah, Florida. And when I'd go between grandparents' house, go over the bridge on 103rd Street there in Miami, I'd always look to the left and see what was happening in the yard. And Grandpa took me down there a couple times, and I just had a blast. So I was looking on Google Maps. Of course, we all do that from time to time. And there is a ton of switching down south of there. Lance Menheim has done a layout based on that downtown spur down there. Anyway, I saw that. So we have some modules we call mini modules that only have the main line. So it's basically a half a module. Only have the main line or only have the switching district. And I wanted to do something like that with the switching district. So I have a 42-inch wide, 8-foot long module that's basically my hub, if you will. And then it rides in the carrier with it's about 12 maybe mini modules that can connect to that hub. And so that's been a ton of fun here. Just having that, it only connects to our 21 track, our switching district. And so I've been building those modules and trying to get scenery put together and getting in analysis paralysis with my laser cutter, trying to figure out what to do there with those things and all. But I'm trying to make sure that I at least come to the show with a B- module to match up with all these scenery wizards. So I've been having a blast with that. So I actually posted that on the fans of the ATLP site this afternoon, in fact.
Excellent. We'll share a link over to the Friends of Around the Layout podcast group so that folks can check that out. I'm sitting here thinking, could this modular thing get somebody like me in trouble? Because I'm thinking about what you're saying. You have this area that you've noticed south of Miami and you fall in love with this area. So you build a module. But a guy like me who travels all over the place and sees these really cool spots that would be fun to do on a layout, but I don't have the time nor the space to do an entire layout. I could see somebody that has quite enough ambition. They could really start to build all of these things out, and boy, you could have a whole stack of modules very quickly if you're open-minded.
Yeah, one of the first things that I saw these multi-module sets, a fellow named Randy Costanza had a 40-foot long, 5 8-foot modules steel mill scene, and I mean it was just jaw dropping. It was fantastic. Randy's not hanging out with us too much anymore, but just those kind of things, Ray. You notice something like that, and maybe you can get it done in an 8-foot module. Maybe it's a 12-foot module. Maybe it's a couple 8-footers or whatever. We've got numerous things like that, and it really works out well.
I really want to come down and I really want to see the Sipping and Switching Society of North Carolina set up, and I'm going to do it. But I'm kind of afraid to, because I think this is going to really get me into the modular thing. It's just what an awesome opportunity to be able to model to your heart's content in a diverse amount of ways.
Yep.
I guess is the best way I can put it, and satisfy those trips down the rabbit hole.
Yep. So Ray, one more thing I wanted to let you know about, and the listeners know about. So our switching district, if you will, is very much like Primo. And so we've had some opportunities to interface our layout with some Primo layouts. We actually did that for the first time I remember was the 2007 National Train Show in Detroit. A fellow from there, Tim Moran, worked with Joe, our track wizard, and they've developed a template for speed mode modules. Primo quickly put together speed mode. And so Tim's got, I don't know, there's probably 10, 15, 20 people or so that are building these speed mode modules, and they've got some conversions and can connect up with Primo. So kind of using our concept of the template and the alignment pins and that type thing to get that quick setup of Primo style module.
You folks are doing it right in so many ways. The Sipping and Switching Society of North Carolina itself should be a template for others in mentality. Obviously, you've got to figure it out where you don't need all the hierarchy to make things happen, and that's super wild. And congrats to you folks. And again, I can't wait to get down there and see what you folks do when you get all of this together, and hopefully get a throttle in my hand and be able to test drive your modules. And maybe I'll have to I don't know. I got to be careful here. So I can commit myself to a whole bunch, but very, very cool stuff. Let's get to the question of the month and the answers that were submitted to us. And the question of the month was, what is your favorite or best module you've built? Tell us about it in 90 seconds or less. That was the challenge. And let's see what we got. The first one comes to us from Column Day.
Hi there, Ray. Calum from Western Victoria down here in Australia. Question of the month, what's your favourite module? My favourite module, I must say, is the only module I've ever made. A 2 metre by 300 mil, so about 6 foot by 1 foot, single track main, going through some farmland. Just a simple stretch of track with a field of cows and a small stream. Very simple. And I purely made this for practice to hone my scenery skills before I pulled out the stops and started buying that expensive static grass and ground foam to apply to my main layout. Just think modules like these are a great way to practice scenery skills before investing time and money on the main layout, getting rid of the possibility of doing a subpar job that you wouldn't be happy with, leaving you deflated about your hobby. After all, it is easier to fix mistakes on a small module than what it is to fix mistakes on a room-sized layout. Love the podcast, Ray, and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and appreciate you submitting your answer to the question of the month. And makes me think, and you mentioned Lance Minheim. We talked about all the things you can do with a module, but how about nothing at all? How about some negative space?
The oldest module we have, called Peanut, 1976, and it is essentially negative space. There's no structures on it, anything like that. It's got a real small couple track yard on the 21 on the switching district, but other than that, it's just straight through. And so yeah, we have a few of those.
A lot of possibilities. That's definitely for sure. Our good friend Dennis Colucci. Here we go.
Hey all, my name is Dennis Colucci. I'm from Wappingers Falls, New York. And my favorite module that I've built so far is the only one that's finished, which is a T-Track single module designed with my girlfriend that depicts a small apple orchard. We scratch built a small roadside farm stand to go along with it. We designed in a grade crossing as well as a little hill that the apple orchard is on. And between the train tracks and the start of the hill, there's a small creek with a culvert for the creek to go under the road. So it was a lot of fun to build, a lot of fun to really get into adding a bunch of detail and getting some really nice scenery done for the first time. I scratch built the apple trees. I custom did all of the fall foliage for the rest of the trees. And it was a lot of fun. If you want to see it, I put it in the model showcase for NERX this year. So check it out there. I got some pretty good pictures of work in progress on it. So thanks for the show, Ray. And looking forward to hearing about everyone else's modules.
Well, it sounds like Dennis actually figured out a way to make date night circle around a module.
Good for him. Good job, Dennis.
Excellent. Yeah. And an apple orchard, something different, but, meaningful to him and obviously meaningful to his girlfriend and something that they can take out and share with everybody else.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in those T-Track modules. That's catching on pretty quickly, it seems like.
Absolutely. Let's have a listen to our good friend Don Iris.
Hi, Ray and everybody. This is Don Iris, owner of the Province and Worcester Railroad. I've built a few modules over the years, D&D pulp and paper for the Little Rotary Modular Group. It was about 16 feet long. I used to carry that in a trailer to the different events. And then once that got disbanded, I joined up with the Coastal Mountain Railroad, and I built a 4-foot module of Univar Chemical Company. So I kind of like that one better than the paper mill one. But anyway, that's what I did for modules.
I'm thinking about Don. We've had him here on the show for the Talking Ops with Don Iris, and we've interviewed him about not only his layout that's in his shed in Florida, but when he was building these modules, he had a massive layout in his basement, yet he was still building some of these. And it makes me think, what a great opportunity, even for somebody with a big layout that may be complete or close to complete, to continue to use the skills they learned while they were building the bigger layout and still have an outlet for it.
Absolutely. And then similar to us, gets to go take their modules to a meet and be part of a 3 or 4 day empire.
Absolutely. All right, Mike O'Dorney.
Mike Codorny in Danville, California. My favorite module is a set of 4 that are Märklin HO, and the 4 of them form a square, and I have some special corners to make them be arranged in a square. The very back of the modules is a track that allows a narrow gauge. It's part of the specifications for Märklin European Train Enthusiast modules. The front tracks are basically standard module tracks with a 2-track main line plus some sidings and some passing. And what I use them for is I can use them to simulate an operating session, a very simple operating session for people who've never really done operating. It's quite easy to use. And then people at a show, even though people are operating, the little track in the back has a train going in circles. So there's some activity that doesn't bore the public. It's just that they can see the simple operations that the volunteers are doing. So that's my favorite set of modules, and it's a lot of fun.
Now, it's interesting, kind of best of both worlds that Mike is creating there with his modular layouts.
Yeah, it sure is. And he mentioned narrow gauge, so we have quite a bit of track for a few of our module owners that are dual gauge, have both standard gauge and HON3 on them.
Yeah, being able to cater to a diverse group of model railroaders.
Yep.
Now let's hear from Sam Dickinson.
Hi, Ray. Sam Dickinson from Evansville, Indiana. So far, the only module that I have ever built and fully scenic is a N-scale T-track module that was inspired by Reverend W. Awdry's Thomas the Tank Engine books. The initial idea came from the Teleclin Railway's 2023 Awdry Extravaganza Diorama Challenge, and it features a scene based on a pair of paintings from the book Percy Runs Away. It features a switch signal box alongside of a beach and a small siding where Percy, as he's running away backwards from Gordon, is diverted onto and crashes into a dirt berm. Kids really like seeing this module at shows, and adults are also impressed that I'm able to make something for the kids. I'm also impressed considering it was the very first time I ever did model railroad scenery from start to finish. Hope this answers your question. Look forward to hearing the other answers, and hope you all have a great day.
Well, that certainly does answer the question. That's a really cool thought of being able to build a module that entertains the kids.
Yeah, it is. Our modules being at 48 inches, sometimes the grandparents having to hold their kids up. They're like, why didn't you make these things smaller or shorter? But they don't have to climb underneath those things for 3 or 4 straight days.
Yeah, I think the answer is, well, it's either your back or my back. Which one's it going to be? And guess
exactly.
what? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
We're all hurting puppies when we get done with a weekend.
I bet you are. And then our last submission comes from Paul, who hasn't built his yet, but he's got big plans.
Paul Cassar from Sydney, Australia. I've not built a module. However, I've had a module designed by Isaac Fabris for a future exhibition layout. It's actually 3 modules, and the modules are 18 inches by 35 inches. And it will be called the Riverbelt Spur, which is an offset from my layout, the Riverbelt line. And basically what it is, it's a feed mill and a scrap metal yard. So all in all, there's 4 spurs, 2 interchanges, and a lead at the end of one module. So all the spurs are in the one direction. So you can pick up cars out of the interchange up to the lead and then back cars up into the spurs. It's really designed to show people how to have a shelf layout and switching operations and how much fun that brings. I'll be basically using a proto throttle and possibly waybills and also maybe a switch list just to give people an idea of what you can do with a shelf layout and how much enjoyment that brings. Love the show, Ray, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you, Paul. And you hit on a couple different things there. One is using them as an educational tool, which is a really cool idea. But then the other one that really hit me was We talked about before usually using modules to be the predecessor to a layout or what could fill in then, and then Don, what could continue on while you have a layout. But Paul's hitting on the kind of the other side of it when you finally hit a point where your big layout has to go, but you want to stay in the hobby.
Yep.
So there's a third way of looking at how modules can keep you going.
I spend a lot of time on those shelf layout sites, and I think Paul posts quite a bit on those too. So yeah, there's a lot of commonality between what I like to do with my modules and those shelf layouts that on the social media.
Yeah, they really kind of go hand in hand. It's just the fact that if they're mounted to a wall or their portability, right?
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Well, excellent. Well, I appreciate everyone who submitted their answer to the question of the month. We'll have a new question of the month coming up for May. If you'd like to have your voice heard here on Around the Layout, go to aroundthelayout.com/question. There you will see the question. You'll see the record button. Get a little bit of courage, hit that button and record your answer. And you could possibly hear yourself on the next episode of Around the Layout podcast. Well, Glenn, it has been awesome learning more about the Sipping and Switching Society of North Carolina and hearing a little bit about your story as well. We appreciate you coming on and sharing that with us.
Thank you so much. Enjoyed talking with you, Ray. I mentioned to you I've got a pretty good commute to and from the office, and I'm a frequent listener to your podcast on my commute. So thank you for that, and enjoyed being with you tonight.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.